All right. Well, I have been looking forward to this for literally months. Though for those of you who are in the room, if you look up on the screens, Trait Thompson from the Oklahoma Historical Society was here back in July of last year. And that is a slide from his presentation where he talked about Joyce and some of her experiences, what she's done. And I was just enamored with her. And Trait got me in contact with her, and she thought I was joking when I said, I want you to come talk to my Rotary Club. And wasn't sure quite why I would want her to do that. But I am delighted that she is here today. And on Trait's podcast, one of the things he said about her is that she is a phenomenally important woman in the history of broadcasting here in Oklahoma. She is a former student of Clara Luper and participated in the 1958 Cats drugstore sit-ins as a junior high school student. She was the first Black female on local television in Oklahoma. She is an award-winning broadcast journalist, producer, and talk show host at KOCO in Oklahoma City. She's the founder, publisher, and editor of Shades of Oklahoma magazine, which took a year off, but it's coming back. It is a quarterly publication that spotlights the lives, culture, and history of Black Oklahomans. And I will tell you that I downloaded 2 editions yesterday. It cost me $10. They're really good magazines. You need to check it out. She was the public information officer, that's what PIO stands for, in both Oklahoma and Illinois in the prison systems. And she spent 20 years as a professional model. She has literally done it all. Okay, so I want to spend a little bit of time on KOCO and spend a lot of time on the other stuff. Okay, so you were not only a pioneering woman in this industry, you were a pioneering Black woman in this industry. You were the pioneering Black woman in Oklahoma. She has a microphone.
You already mic'd her on her lapel.
Yeah, she's good. And so how did you come to work in television?
Thing else. I was working for OIC, and I don't know if people are familiar with Opportunities Industrialization Center. And that was formed by Reverend Leon Sullivan out of Pennsylvania, and he projected organizations all across the United States. They were almost like a VOTEC program where they would train people that had been in the service, was coming out looking for work, or people that didn't finish school and was looking for some kind of upgrade in finding work. And so I went to work at OIC as a cashier trainer. I showed people how to use the cash register. Of course, I don't know if many of you remember the cash register, but I worked part-time there, and then I worked downtown at a clothing store at that time. Went to work for OIC, and my boss eventually became the lady that handled all of the contacts with major companies to make donations, because OIC was a nonprofit organization and we're doing everything to help people get on their feet. She called me in, and my job was that at that point, my job was a community allocator. I remember my son always saying, my mom is a community alligator. So, so what we did is we would go talk to companies about making donations for new job training. One day she called me in and she said, what about we talked to some of the television stations about some of their jobs that they could use training for production jobs or whatever jobs they have. I think you should reach out to some of those people. And I said, I don't know anybody at the television stations. And she said, what's your favorite station? And I said, Channel 5. And she said, why? And I said, because they have Ho-Ho the Clown and Pokey the Puppet, and my son and I watch them all the time. And so she said, give them a call and see if we can meet with somebody that's interested in helping us develop some jobs. And so that's what I did. And I was fortunate enough to get directed to John Harrison, who was the vice president of KOCO TV. And he was also the community affairs director also. And when I talked to him on the telephone, he said, yeah, I'd be interested in coming out and talking to you about some jobs. And so he made an appointment. He came out. And so we worked with John for, I think it was over a year, when he approached me one day and said, I'd like to talk to you about coming to work for Channel 5. And I said, I dropped out of college. And he said, I didn't ask you what you did. He said, I would like you to come and be my assistant. My assistant and her husband are moving out of state because he had an upgrade. And so I said, I don't know, what do you want me to do? And he said, as my assistant, you would be making coffee. And I said, I don't make coffee. He said, and you'd be doing some typing. And I said, I can type, but I don't type real fast. And then he said, you'd probably be giving some tours of Channel 5. You'd be a part-time receptionist and helping me with the public service. And I said, I thought you had to have a degree to work in television. And he said, well, that depends, but I'd like you to come to work for me. And after our conversation, John said, I've never had anybody to ask all kind of questions and tell me that basically they didn't want to do that. So, after a while, I told him I would come out to the station, and he took me on a tour and introduced me to people. And then after he told me I had the job, I called him back and said, I don't think I'm quite ready. So I said, maybe after Christmas, I'll come to work. And so I went to work for Channel 5, and John asked me, why did I delay it? And it's because I realized when I walked into the station, there were no minorities in the station. But I did find out that there was a minority there. And it was the janitor that was a minister. And when I went into television, that's when television cut off at midnight. And he did the prayer to end the television programs at midnight. And he was on the air. He was on the air. And so I went to work for Channel 5, and it was exciting and an adventure and all of those things at once.
So how did you transition from an administrative role to being on-air talent?
Well, after I was there about 6 months, John asked me, had I ever thought about being in front of the camera? And I said, no.
Just no again.
No again. And he said, well, let's go downstairs and do a little practice. And I think you would be great for a program that a community affairs program. And so we went downstairs, and I cried. When they cut on the cameras, I started tearing up, and John said, why are you crying? So all these people be looking at me. He said, but it's okay. It's okay. And I said, okay. And so I was placed on the air about 6 months after, and John was my mentor and guidance and everything. Yeah.
And you eventually started reporting. And one of the big feathers in your cap is you broke the Penn Square Bank failure story. Yes. You broke it nationwide.
Nationwide. Had no idea the significance of that at that time. But my husband was an attorney and had two partners. And one of his partners called me and said, Joyce, I just want to put a little bug in your ear. Penn Square is getting ready to shut down. FDIC is coming in to shut it down. And I thought you should know that. And I said, you're kidding. And he said, no. And so I said, okay. I went right to my news director and he jumped up out of the chair and he said, whoa, okay, let's get out there, call the president and see if we can get an interview. Well, we called and his assistant said, I'm afraid he's not available.
Big surprise.
Yeah, right. And so I said, well, what time is he coming in or what time will he be available? And she said, well, I really don't know. So I got off the phone and my boss said, did you find out anything? And I said, no. He said, go. And we went out to Penn Square and they, first they let us in and we asked to speak to the president. And she took us upstairs and we spoke to him and I asked him, were they planning to close the bank? Because the bank had already been in the news because of all the money for the oil and property that they were working with. And he said, no, we're not having any problem.
He denied everything.
He denied everything. And I said, okay. And so we left the bank. We had that video where he said no. We left the bank and I called the boss at the station and he said, stay there for a while and see what's going on.
So you just camped out.
We camped out and the next thing we saw the suits come in. And we saw the bank close. And then we saw people started gathering.
And you were the only ones there.
And we were the only ones there. And we went back to the station and put it on the air. And that's when I realized it was a big story because networks start calling immediately as soon as we put it out there. So,
Now,
yeah.
you also had multiple opportunities to go to the network and
Yes.
you turned them down.
Yeah,
Again, you said no and you stuck to it.
I did. I turned them down because my husband was an attorney and we talked about it. I got an offer to go to ABC and offer to go to later on to one of the ABC affiliates and another offer later on. But the reason I turned them down is because we had kids in school and we decided we didn't want to just uproot the kids and take them across the world to New York City. And of course he would have to take the bar again. And he said, I really don't want to do that again. He said, but whatever you want to do, I'm right with you. So I thought about it and I decided, no, I didn't want to go to New York either. So I didn't. And a couple of years later, I got another offer. And eventually I found out that my boss even told my husband about a position working for the CIA. Were looking for people. My husband not only was an attorney, but he had a chemistry degree also. And so they were interested in hiring somebody. And he was all excited when he found out about the job. And then when he came home, he said, you know, your boss did that. And he said, I appreciate, but I'm not going to New York.
So you were in a very high profile position
Yeah.
and had a lot of successes,
Yes.
but it wasn't all a bed of roses, was it?
No. When I first started, of course, we got the phone calls and the threats and all the comments. And like I said, he put me on the air 6 months after I had started at the station. And so the switchboard would light up and people would come out to the station and make threats. And eventually it got to a point where we even had the FBI making sure that I got home safely for a period of time. But there were people in the station, they became family, and they were always so open. And Ida B was one of those people because she put me on her show, which was live, and Ida B was the biggest thing in Oklahoma with her television show, and of course Ho 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 the clown became a great friend of mine. We were and Pokey the puppet, which was but because of the camaraderie and just the care that the people that I worked with, I was fortunate. So I didn't have any problems. I had a funny little incident. Well, it wasn't funny at the time. I went out to do a news story and had a gentleman, I think he had a foot fetish. And I was doing a news report out in the field with some sandals on, and right in the middle of the report, he got down on his hands and knees and grabbed my feet. But my photographer, my videographer was a young man. But yeah, that was the crazy. But yeah, it was.
Okay, so now let's go backwards in time now.
All right.
You grew up in a segregated Oklahoma.
Yes.
And spent a lot of time in a desegregated California.
Yes.
Let's talk about some of those experiences.
Well, because my parents had divorced, my mother, I was raised by my stepfather and my mother here in Oklahoma. But during my school years, one of the things that my parents would do when my daddy would just decide every couple of years that he wanted me and my sister to come to California. So my childhood and education is between Oklahoma City and going to Oakland, California, or staying in Fresno where my grandmother lived. And so that's what we did. During that period of time, I was in Miss Luper's class. I was one of her students. And when she started the sit-in, then all of her students were members of the NAACP and members of the Youth Council. And so of course, all of us wanted to be involved. She told us that we were gonna help correct things, that because we were not allowed to go into the restaurants and eat. We were allowed to pay for our food and go to the back and pick up your food. We were not allowed to try on clothes in the stores because our parents or grandparents, whoever, they would have to have a measuring tape and tell someone to go and purchase the clothes. And that's how we got our
It was
clothes.
just a different time.
It was a different time. It was definitely.
So tell us how these sit-ins your involvement in the sit-ins came to be.
Well, I of course, all the students asked their parents, you know, because Miss Luper was getting ready to start the
and she was a history teacher.
Yes. That's why I love history so much. Miss Luper was quite a teacher. Because of that, I asked my parents, could I go? And it was a rumbling kind of in the community because a lot of parents were afraid to let their kids be involved in anything like that when they found out about the kids going downtown. And my mother said, no. And so I cried and carried on. My daddy said, let her go. All of those kids love their teacher and she's going to watch out. She's not going to let anything happen to those kids. My mother had a talk with Ms. Luper and said, do not let my daughter go to jail. Do not let my daughter get hurt out there. And so I got a chance to start participating in the sit-ins downtown, and we would go to different restaurants sit outside, or a couple of places locked us inside till the police came and got us. And about being locked up.
And
What-
so you did get arrested,
Yes.
despite the fact that Mama said, don't let her get arrested.
Yes. And what my mother didn't realize for years is that I was excited about
All your friends have been arrested already, right?
and been arrested. I wanted to be you want to be a part of it. You know? So when I got a chance to be arrested, when I came home that evening, because they would pick us up and we would go down to Calvary Church and prepare to be nonviolent. That's one of the things that Mr. Luper would teach us each time. We would have prayer, we would have a cheering song singing to energize us to march 2 by 2 downtown. And the day, the first time I got arrested, I was just so excited. And we sang songs in the jail. They took us in the paddy wagon and put us in the jail. And then, of course, they would take, never in a million years that I ever think about being really arrested. I mean, where you have a record or.
They discarded you off.
You're right.
They didn't fingerprint you. They didn't go through it.
No, they put us in a cell and we sang songs until somebody came and opened the door and told us we could go home. And my mother didn't find out until I was a grown woman. And she said, I can't believe you didn't. But the day she asked me was one of the days I had gone. And she said, I was looking at television and they took a group of those kids downtown. You weren't in that group, were you? And I said, no, no, ma'am. So yeah, that was probably the most exciting thing for me. Yeah.
So when you're participating in these sit-ins, talk about how you were treated by the staff and by other patrons of those establishments.
They would call us names. They would push us, or and you'd never think that older people would be mean, but they would do all kind of things, push us in the back. And so our training, Miss Luper said, no matter what they do, you turn your face, turn the other cheek. You do not get angry, because if you get angry, you cannot participate. This is a non-violent, and so we were taught to not try to retaliate or anything, and that's exactly what we did. We followed her orders, but they did all kinds of things: pinch us, push us, pull our hair, pour things on us, and call us a lot of nasty names that you wouldn't think adults would call children.
And so I saw a quote as I was doing my research that really all you wanted was a burger and a Coke.
Yes, that's all we be But what people didn't realize also is we had no money. We couldn't have paid for it anyway. But people later on, as I became an adult, Miss Luper told us that we had angels all around us. And those angels were people from every community, every diversity, every ethnicity, that took care of whatever the fee was to get us out of jail, that fed us, when we left the jail, so that we would always have something to eat when we left before we got home. So there were people always watching over us, and we didn't really realize that at that time.
So how did the lessons that Ms. Luper taught you at this stage of your life help you when you were in television and help you when you were in the prison system? It had to have had a big impact on how you conducted yourself.
Absolutely, because I was the kid that sit in the corner that was real bashful. And one of the things that stuck in my head is Ms. Luper was always teaching us to be leaders in some capacity. She wrote plays. Matter of fact, the play that she wrote about Martin Luther King was really how things began to move forward. And she said, walk like you know where you're going, talk like you know what you're talking about, and hold your head up, and you can do anything. And I took that to heart. Never did I prepare to go into the television business, but once I was in the television business, my boss said, are you going to go back to school? And I said, I'm not sure, but I did. I went back to school and got my degree in communications, broadcast communications, and it was all because of Miss Luper. And she instilled that strength in all of us, because all of us became, I think, not your average bear, you know, because never in a million years would I have thought of being in television, and didn't realize the impact until I was there a period of time, because I did a couple of community affairs programs on Channel 5. And because of that, I had the full support of our community. And because I was from Oklahoma City, I had influence enough to try to change the narrative of what was seen on the news. Because at the time that I went into the news department and television, every time you saw someone Black on television, it was usually being hauled off to jail or something negative. And so we then began to spotlight things that were positive in the community. So, yeah.
You're actually transitioning to my next set of questions, which is unrest in the 60s.
Yes.
No, we think of the Kennedy assassinations and Dr. King and Malcolm X, but that's sort of the tip of the iceberg. There was a lot of unrest for a lot of different reasons. Absolutely.
Matter of fact, when I went to California right after I graduated from Douglas High School, I went to California, and my daddy wanted me to go to school in California. And so I enrolled in Oakland City College. And the college was, at that time, the Merritt campus was probably about 3 blocks from where I lived in Oakland. And the neighbor across the street was someone that my father had been in the service with, and his son was Bobby Seale. And Bobby Seale was one of the founders of the Black Panther Party.
And in fact, you were a member of the Black Panthers before they turned violent.
Right, right. Because their aim when they started the Black Panthers was basically to offer health clinics in the community, food for the kids, literacy programs, reading to the kids, mentoring the kids, those kind of things. And a bunch of us used to sit in the courtyard at Oakland City and talk about the things that the community needed. And it was at a time where there was a lot of raucous about the police and the way they manage people in the Black community. And so they decided to start the Black Panther to try to help the community. And so it was in the church basement where it first started. And we would feed the kids breakfast before they went to school, and help with their parents and their medical, because we brought in medical people. And that's how it started. And that was the impetus of the Black Panther Party. So I was there when we first started. When there was someone that got beat up in the community, and Bobby and Huey Newton went to Oakland City also. And Huey and Bobby were the founders of the organization. They read all the legislation about laws in California and realized that anyone could carry a gun for protection. And so they decided that they were going to get licensed to carry guns so that they could be around if someone was accosted by police or whoever. That they started that, and then they decided to go to the state legislature in Sacramento and talk to the legislators about it. And that's when it hit the headlines all over the United States that they were packing guns, and people began to call them all kinds of names and groups. And when my father saw it on television, he was just berserk. I can't believe that I asked Bobby to protect you because he said I was from Oklahoma. He wanted Bobby to walk with me to Oakland City. I said, well, I'm out of high school. I'm a big girl. So when that hit the fan all over the world, my father got in touch with his father and talked to him really bad and told me I needed to come back to Oklahoma where I would not be exposed to that kind of stuff. So I was involved.
Okay.
Yeah.
Compare and contrast the nonviolent philosophy versus the violent philosophy. And
Yeah.
Dr. King certainly epitomized the nonviolent approach.
Right, absolutely. And that was everything that Miss Luper wanted to do. And of course, with Bobby and Huey, they were saying that we needed to confront the legislators and let people know that they were there to protect us and that they had a right because of the laws and legislation. And that's when the Black Panther thing began to grow all over the country, and it turned. But they never did teach us violence. And people used to say to me, did you carry a gun? No, I never carried a gun. I had a beret and a leather jacket. For the look. But no, they didn't really preach that we should be out there fighting people.
Mm-hmm.
They were preaching that we had rights and that we need to know the law, and we need to know our rights, and we need to be cognizant of that and make sure that we were protected. So, and so the Black Panthers has had a bad rap for many, many years. Yeah.
So we're about out of time. So why don't you talk to us a little bit about where we are today and where you think we are versus where we were back in the 50s and 60s?
I think we're going backwards rapidly today, and I'm just shocked, and I'm floored by the fact that there are really people that don't want the kids to know the knowledge of our history. Black history is American history. I'm floored by the things that are being done to clamp off, but it's not just history of Black folks, it's history of Asians, history of Muslims, history of anyone, and we all make up America. And we're not immigrants here, we're Americans. And so, yes, I'm floored by that. And as an elder now, I'm very involved with the I'm involved with the restoration of the Freedom Center that we had there in Oklahoma City. And one of the things that we are planning to do, of course, is we're in the process of building a Clara Luper Civil Rights Center, which was approved by the MAPS 4 program there in Oklahoma City. And so we are working with all kinds of organizations to make sure that our books are not continued to be banned and that our history is not continued to be hidden or forgotten. And so I'm still involved. I'm just not out on the street marching anymore, but I am. I can't believe that it was 65 years ago that we had a civil rights bill passed. And here we are today, where people are trying to diminish our rights or diminish the involvement of people that just make up America.
Mhm.
So yes,
So what advice do you have for us, for our children, for our grandchildren, as we move forward?
my advice is to meet and interact with people all around you. And guess what? You'll learn something. And you'll learn that we're all alike and we all have basically the same dreams and things for our families, for our friends, that that we're really not out to harm each other, that we need to be a little more open-minded and realize that cutting off this person's history also cuts off your history, you know, because they don't get a chance to really learn about you. You don't get a chance to learn about me. So yes, there's a need for us to really change the narrative in this day and time. And we've got to do that. And hopefully the youngsters that are out there on the front line are cognizant of the fact that because there was a time that Blacks were not allowed to learn how to read.
Mhm.
And here we are taking away the books that the kids can find out about their own history. That's crazy. Yeah.
I gave a lot of thought to how to conclude this, and I wanted to be sure we ended on an up.
Okay.
Okay. So you've had a lot of successes in your career. You've
Yeah.
had a lot of challenges in
Yeah.
your career and in your life. But for what are you most thankful?
I'm most thankful that I had the opportunity in my lifetime to be involved with so many wonderful people that was surrounded us when we were involved in the city, and some of those people that are still with us or still out there trying to do all of the right things again. I'm involved. I'm grateful that I was exposed to the things that I was exposed to, because it broadened my world tremendously. And I hope everyone else gets the same opportunity. So yeah.
Well, Joyce Jackson, this has been my privilege, and I will tell you that I have enjoyed every second of this. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, oh, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
You
you.
very, very, very much.
Thank
Thank you for doing.